Opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
Good morning and welcome to Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell. Now for today's show, here's attorney Ethel Mitchell.
Attorney Ethel Mitchell. I am your host at Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell. Welcome to all who are listening live and throughout the world on Radio 1, station 1450 AM, on the internet at WOLDC.com, and on my website, lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com. I welcome everyone, and we are so excited that you are joining us for our first one-hour show, bringing you our Power of Attorney's Advanced Medical Directives. So if you or anyone you know needs a will, a trust, or assistance in administering an estate, call me at 202-772-1988. That's 202-772-1988. I also have a sponsor, Equity Resources of 10G Street Northeast in Washington, D.C. Equity Resources purchases homes in the D.C. metropolitan area. So if you want to sell your home, please be in touch with them. You can contact them at 202-621-6632. We are so excited that you are joining us today for our new time slot. We will have more time to bring you more information and to receive and respond to your questions and your comments. Law is really powerful. It can help you or it can hurt you. It impacts everything that we do. It's the one area of life where what you don't know can really hurt you, but what you do know can empower you. So each week, my aim with this program is to empower you by bringing you professionals who know the law or other related areas to enlighten and to inform you. All of our programs are archived on my website, lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com. So if you missed a program or you just want to know the information again, or you have a friend that you think would benefit from hearing what was on that program or on those programs, whether it had to do with prenuptial agreements, Veterans Affairs, we've discussed so many different topics already, and we've got a lot more for you coming. Be sure and go there to lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com, and they are all archived right there for your listening pleasure. We want you to be part of the conversation, so write this down. My executive producer, Stacy Royster, is right here with me today, waiting to receive your comments and your questions. So call us at 1-800-450-7876. That's 1-800-450-7876, or tweet us at LawTalkEM. You can also like us at Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell on Facebook. First, I must remind you, however, that whatever you hear on this program is for information purposes only. No attorney-client relationship is established by anything that's said on this show. Each person's circumstances are different, so you must seek individual counsel for any situation for which you need legal advice. Let's get started. Today I'm going to focus the entire show on my area of expertise, wills, trust, and estate planning. And if we have time, I will also talk about probate. I will do this periodically to help you understand how to plan and properly protect yourself, your loved ones in the future. Estate planning has to do with while you're alive as much as after the time of your death. It also has to do with every age group. We tend to think about, older people are the ones that only need to have power of attorneys and wills. But in point of fact, in this year, in the last 6 months alone, I've had two 30-year-olds to die who were clients. In one instance was a gentleman who was sick and knew he was sick, had cancer, and knew he was dying, and so we were able to empower his parents to take care of his business affairs when he got so sick that he could not, because they knew it was coming. And we were able to do a will which properly allocated his assets in the way in which he wanted, instead of having it go according to the law of intestacy, which is what happens when you don't have a will. And for example, if you are of any age, single, have no children, both of your parents inherit equally from you in Washington, D.C., and in most states for that matter. And what that would mean is a parent who you may not have had anything to do with, a parent who may not have been any part of your rearing, or a parent who was very mean to you, is going to inherit equally with that parent who maybe nurtured and helped you along your way. So I want everyone of all ages to listen carefully, because there's so many things that you can do that will make sure that you're properly protected, and that your hard work, and money will go the way that you want it to go whenever God calls us home, whether it's by a car accident, disease, whatever. But you can put this in place, and then it's done. You don't have to worry about it. It's done. So today, we're going to flip the script, as we say. My executive producer, Stacy Royster, is going to have a conversation with me and ask me questions today as my co-host. So, Stacy, how are you? Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, and I'm so excited about the new time block this morning.
I am too.
Yes.
I am too.
Yes. Where our fabulous host, Attorney Ethel Mitchell, has more than 20 years of legal experience and has distinguished herself as a leading practitioner focusing on wills, trusts, estate planning, and probate. She is a sought-after legal advisor and frequent legal affairs orator. Ms. Mitchell is a member of the Bar Associations of Maryland, Washington, D.C., Virginia, Texas, United States Virgin Islands, and Ghana. Ms. Mitchell completed her undergraduate studies at Fisk University and received her Juris Doctor degree from Columbia Law School, and then served as law clerk to Chief Judge Christian in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. Passionate about educating people to use the law proactively to empower themselves, Attorney Mitchell continues to engage her listeners about various aspects of the law and how it directly impacts their lives during her weekly broadcast, which you're listening to right now, Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell, which she launched in February of this year right here on Radio 1's WOL 1450 AM. Thank you, Ethel, for sharing your expertise with your listeners today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Yes.
So you started out giving us some brief scenarios about the importance of having your business straight.
Yes.
And I know that you often speak of 3 documents that every adult needs to have. Tell us what those are.
Okay. There are 3 main documents that every responsible adult needs to have. Those documents are a durable power of attorney, advance medical directive, and a last will and testament. So let me go over each of those and explain to you what financial check.
Okay. We'll take a brief pause and take the caller who has a question, Ethel. Caller, go right ahead. Miss Attorney Ethel Mitchell is awaiting your question.
Yes, I have a probate I think she's fine. So I said I will get all the information I can for you.
Okay.
But I said, only thing I was telling her, I said, well, maybe you have to go to a probate twice. It went down that far, but she cannot benefit as far as senior citizens or nothing, and then she had to deal with also taxes. So I'm trying to help her out.
Okay, I can only be very general in my response,
yes.
But certainly if you want to call me at 202-772-1988, I'd be glad to set up a meeting with her, and when she comes, to bring with her a copy of the deed to the home that's in question, be able to tell me who has title to the home and how she's related to that person, if there was a will, okay, and what the relationships are of that person's family. In other words, did the person who owned the house have children? When did they die? Probate is really, you're right, it's the process of distributing property from someone who's dead to someone who's alive. It varies in different states. Virginia has a different way of doing it than Maryland and D.C. Maryland is a little different than D.C. also. But basically, you start with a petition for administration of the estate. You'll have to have a death certificate. You'll have to say how the person is related and what property they own, okay? And then depending on the answers to various questions as to her relationship to the person that owned the property, we may be able to get that property into her name, okay? But that's the process that would take place.
What about the inheritance taxes and all that?
Well, again, it depends on who owns the property. What's really important, and I'm seeing this more and more, is families don't do anything. Nobody pays the taxes, and then the property gets lost for taxes.
Well, she's paying the taxes, but it's going up, then she can't benefit as far as senior citizen.
Right, because her name is not on it. In order to get the senior citizen benefit or the exemption, her name has got to be on the property. So we've got to do the probate process to make that happen if she's legally entitled to do it. Okay.
And another thing, she, I think she was telling me about some kind of lien or something. I don't know, but
you have to be careful with those.
Yeah, I said, well, all right. I said, well, I'll do all I can. And your number is 2027. What is it? 202-772-1988. 202-772-1988. Give me a call, and we'll set up an appointment. I will pay this to her, and maybe you can be able to help her to get out this mess because she's in the age herself.
Yeah, that's true of a lot of people. It really is. And one of the reasons that I do this program is to alert people as to how they can fix this mess that they're in, because it can be fixed, but each situation is different, and I have to know the facts of each situation. But quite often there are things that we can do. But don't wait. Please tell her not to wait, because literally people have walked into my office when they're about to sell the house because nobody paid the taxes. You see what I mean? And at that point, it's really hard to get anything done. We might be able to. I'll do everything that I can, but it's really hard to do. So anytime anybody has any question about their rights to property, I encourage you to please pursue it quickly. Don't wait. Don't wait. Seriously, you can really get behind the 8 ball fast in this particular case. So I look forward to hearing from you. So give me a call, 202-772-1988. Okay?
Got you.
Thank you for calling. Sure.
Yes, thank you. And Ethel, this just points to, as you were speaking before at the opening of the show, the importance also of getting this type of information handled in advance, if you can.
Yes.
So I know before our caller called in, you were talking about a durable power of attorney.
Right.
Let's pick back up on that.
Okay, thank you. A power of attorney, and it says I appoint somebody to sign my checks, to take care of my legal affairs, okay? It can be what we call a springing power of attorney, where you say, this power of attorney is only effective if 2 doctors say that I have lost the capacity to manage my own affairs. So you can make it so that, even without that, you can make it so that you can still take care of your own affairs, but you will not allow anybody to act on your behalf without those medical designations from 2 doctors. And I've had that to happen where someone becomes incompetent. We have to actually get written documentation from the doctors that say on their letterheads that they've examined the person, they're no longer able to act on their behalf. We take those letters with the power of attorney to the bank, and then the bank gives you access to their financial affairs. So those power of attorneys don't mean that you're giving away your power. Okay, a lot of people are afraid of that. So you can make it that way, and the banks and others will make the person who's doing it bring them those kind of documents before they allow them to act.
And is there a suggested age to start this process? Because I know typically people think about, well, maybe when the person becomes a senior citizen, we should think about these things.
No.
But you could be hit by a car.
You could be hit by a car.
Have some other emergency life
anything
situation
at any age. Once you become an adult, You really need to have these documents.
Right
because,
away.
like I said, the 30-year-olds who died, there are as many who have had car accidents. Young people are having strokes. They're becoming incapacitated. The other thing that's important to know is you need these documents even if you are married to somebody. Because people assume that when you're married, your spouse can do these things. Not so. I have had spouses to call me frantic because their loved one is in the hospital and their job will not tell them what benefits they have.
Wow.
Because they don't have power of attorney. The bank won't give them access to their bank accounts. You see. I mean, think about it. What would happen if you got really sick, or your spouse, or your loved one, or your fiance, or the person that you live with,
Right.
got really sick and they couldn't get to your bank account? They couldn't find out what your benefits are.
And I guess similarly with medical power of attorney,
Same thing.
If you live with someone and let's say their next of kin could really say she can't come in.
Absolutely.
He
And
can't
that
come
has
in.
happened.
Wow.
That has happened. When there are quite a few cases where people live together and the families didn't like it, and the moment one of them got sick, the families pushes the other one out.
Wow.
Okay? There have been cases where grandparents have raised children all of their lives, and when the grandparent dies, the children of that grandparent put the grandchildren out of the house. Okay? So you truly have to empower people. The law allows you to do it, but you've got to do it. You've got to put it in writing. Okay? You got to put it in a legally acceptable form that the banks and others will respect. And if you don't, not only will the very people that you would like to be in control, because you know your family. Okay,
Right.
I tell people all the time, you know your family. You know who's good with money and who's not.
Right.
You know who, as we say, is trifling. You know,
Right.
they don't pay their own bills, so they're not going to pay yours. You know who is going to take care of business in the way that you want, and that's who you want in charge of your money. And the power of attorney does not have to be a relative. That's another thing
Very
people get
important.
mixed up. They don't have to be a relative. They can be any other adult that you have confidence in. Okay?
Excellent.
So that's really, really important. So number one, you need to have a durable power of attorney.
Okay.
Number two, you need to have an advanced medical directive. And that has to have the HIPAA language in it. HIPAA is a law that allows doctors to discuss your personal medical information with someone. And hospitals are tightening up on it. They're saying we're not going to tell people who don't have the HIPAA language, they're not the HIPAA agent, we're not giving information. They're becoming very, very particular about that. So your medical directive has two parts. One is what's called a living will, and a lot of people get that mixed up. The living will is not the last will and testament. It says, do you want to receive medical attention if you get to the point where you're about to die?
Meaning life support,
Life
or breathing
support, exactly.
machine,
Do
that
you
kind of
want
thing.
life support or not? And usually there are three circumstances. Excuse me. One is if you're in a terminal condition. That's where a doctor says, even if we give her all kind of medical treatment, and this is extreme. Everybody's going to die. Okay, let's just be real. We're not talking about, you have a bad cold or something like that.
Right.
We're talking about your death is imminent. The doctor says your death is imminent. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to still give you life support? Do you want them to still put you on a feeding tube or not? Do you want them to do everything that they can to keep you alive? Or do you want them to just keep you comfortable, and allow you to die naturally?
And whether your family agrees or disagrees,
You can
as
say
long
whatever
as
you want to.
they
It's
have
up
to
to you.
carry out your wishes.
Well, the doctors have your wishes in writing.
Okay.
Okay? So you make that decision, and you do not want to make somebody else make that decision for you. Okay? I've seen it break up families where one child says, you're killing my mother, and everybody else is ready to let her go because you understand what's going on. And those are the kinds of fractures in families that we can avoid by you making your own living will.
Very important.
Okay, that is really, really important. The other part of the medical directive is what is sometimes called the healthcare power of attorney, where you say, this is the person that I want the doctors to talk to. I agree that they can talk to me, to this person about my medical care. I agree that this person can sign me in or transfer me to different kinds of facilities. I agree that this person can sign releases for me in the hospital, you see. And again, in both of these documents, you can have one person, then you can have a backup person. Doesn't have to be just one person. They can be the same person for both power of attorney for health care and for legal and financial, or they can be different.
And if you have two persons, can you have, instead of the main and the backup, can you have two simultaneous?
Can also have two simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not uncommon.
Well,
okay?
if they disagree, I don't know.
In terms of the most important decision on health, on your life support, you will have made that decision
in advance.
Okay. You can also say, I appoint these people, but I want them to notify certain other people. Okay? So those are the kinds of things. Now let's talk about what happens when you don't have it.
Okay.
When you don't have a power of attorney for legal and financial matters, and you get sick, or you become incompetent, for any reason, whether it's a car accident, a stroke, heart attack, it could be any reason, whatever, dementia. A lot of people are getting early onset dementia. I've heard of 50-year-old people with early onset dementia, and it happens quickly. Okay? When it happens, for any reason you become incapacitated, if you don't have a power of attorney where you have personally appointed somebody, then your family has to go to court. The court gets involved and they ask for the appointment of a guardian or a conservator. A conservator manages your money. A guardian is a guardian of the person, meaning your body. They take care of your medical care. The conservator of your money is the one that literally takes over your bank account. They take your bank account, they put it in a guardianship bank account. Everything that they spend has to be reported to the court. They now have control over your finances instead of your family. Because quite often the courts appoint lawyers who may not know your family from Adam or Eve. And so their judgment now is substituted for the judgment of your loved ones when it comes to what kind of care mama gets, what kind of care my grandfather gets, how their money is spent. Do they get a nurse's aid? Is the nurse's aid paid X amount? All those kinds of things. Your property now becomes under the control of a stranger because you didn't have a power of attorney.
And that you bring out a very important point because you know your family more than like
anybody else,
a doctor even, or a an attorney.
Oh, definitely.
So it behooves all of us to get our business in order, as we said.
Yes.
We are talking with our host, Attorney Ethel Mitchell. This is some great information, and I'm sure that we're learning a lot. I am thinking back even when my own father was hospitalized, and at that point, my parents didn't have a power of attorney. So it's just amazing to me, and I've learned a lot in my short time of life. So it's just a continual learning experience. I know we need to take a short break.
Okay.
And so we're going to come back with Attorney Ethel Mitchell and discuss more about advanced medical directives and wills.
Okay. Yeah, we will talk about that when we get back.
News updates on the web at WOLDCnews.com.
Hi, I'm Layla Ali. I might be undefeated in professional boxing, but there's one problem even I can't fight alone. Childhood hunger. Over 17 million kids in America may not know where their next meal is coming from. That's 1 in 5 children. Yet billions of pounds of surplus food produced right here in America just get thrown out every year. That's more than enough to feed every last hungry child. That's why the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks gathers surplus food and gets it to hungry kids before it goes to waste. But they can't do it without your help. Join me in supporting Feeding America and your local food bank by going to feedingamerica.org. Together we can knock out hunger. Together we're Feeding America.
To help solve hunger in your community and to find your local food bank, visit feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
1 in 5 children in America go to school hungry every day. I'm Viola Davis. I was one of those children. I was one of the nearly 17 million kids who worry where their next meal will come from. Join me with the Safeway Foundation and the Entertainment Industry Foundation to help us end childhood hunger.
Help undo hunger for America's children. Go to hungeris.org to learn more.
Jen, I have something to tell you. Yesterday, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
How about a slice? Let's hit the food court.
Jen, I have something to tell you. Yesterday, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Well, we could just go see the 740 movie instead of the 645.
Jen, I have something to tell you. Yesterday, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
You just need some new earrings and you'll feel a lot better.
When a friend tells you they've been diagnosed with a mental illness, it can be a little awkward. But what's even more awkward is, if you're not there for her, she'll be less likely to recover.
Jen, I have something to tell you. Yesterday, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Girl, I'm here for you. Whatever it takes.
Mental illness. What a difference a friend makes. For more information on how to help a friend dealing with mental illness, go to whatadifference.org. This message is brought to you by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
1450 WOL, where information is power.
Good morning, and welcome back to Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell. Host attorney Ethel Mitchell is also our guest today. I'm Stacy Royster, executive producer, and enjoying a great conversation with attorney Ethel Mitchell about wills, trust, estate planning, and probate. We're talking with her about the 3 main documents that every responsible adult needs to have. She started off talking about power of attorney, and we're talking about advanced medical directives. So attorney Ethel Mitchell, let's pick back up there.
Okay.
And also remind our listeners, if you have a question or comment, please call our studio line at 1-800-450-7876. Again, that's 1-800-450-7876.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue. The power of attorneys that I talked about and the healthcare directives are effective while you are alive. Okay? When somebody dies, I like to say the power of attorney dies with you. And I want to make that clear because a lot of people think if they have a power of attorney while the person is alive, they have the right to continue to act on their behalf when they die. And that is not true.
That's a separate process.
It's a very different process. The power of attorney dies with you. So a lot of people may have power of attorney over bank accounts and so forth. But the moment the bank finds out that that person is dead, they freeze that bank account. And that can be a real problem when you need to pay for the funeral expenses and so on like that, okay? That's where the will comes in. Not so much for the funeral expenses, but the will now takes over once a person dies. Either the will or the trust. Now, we're not going to have time to do trust today, I don't think at least. But we'll do a program on trust at another time. But if you want to know more about it, people can call me at 202-772-1988. But let's talk now about the last will and testament. That is the document which is primarily used to distribute property once someone dies. The will does not take effect until you are dead. So please understand, the will can be changed at any time as long as the person is alive and competent to do so. The last will and testament does many things. Number one, it identifies who you are, the person making the will. And when it's a woman, it's important to identify all names that woman has been known by. So your maiden name, when I do wills, I put maiden names on there, and I put any name that you may have acquired through marriage. Because quite often we find property in a different name. And if it's already in the will, it's easy to say, Your Honor, this is the same person.
Oh, interesting.
Because she said she was Miss Watson as well as Miss Watkins in her will.
And you don't have to go through proving it.
You don't have to go through proving it. And I've had to try and find people to prove that Miss Watson, for example, is the same as Miss Watkins. Mm-hmm. So that's important. Number 2, you identify, at least when I do it, who are your heirs? Whether you're married, if you have children, whether you're going to give them stuff or not, okay? But you at least identify who your children are and who you are married to. And if you're not married, and if you don't have any children.
It all has to be clearly stated.
Well, I like to do it that way. I'm a little bit more thorough. Not all wills have to have it that way. But I've found over the years in doing this work, for example, it's important that the judge knows there are no more children out there that have to be notified. Okay? There's no more spouse out there, because your spouse is deceased. Or, whatever it is, it's important to just be very clear about it. Because the courts are very protective once somebody dies. For men, it's important for you to say either these are my children or to say these are my intended heirs. Because you do not have to leave all of your children anything. Let's make that clear, okay? You do not have to leave anything to anybody except you cannot disinherit your spouse. Very dissipated. I know. Okay? So, but I still like to identify who they are. Then the will begins the process of saying what you want done with the property that you have acquired. Okay? There are different ways of distributing property, however. One way is through the last will and testament. Another way is through beneficiary designations. Okay? You have a life insurance policy, for example, and you say it's supposed to get all your. If your beneficiary designation says Joe Blow is to get it, Joe Blow is going to the beneficiary overrides whatever is in the will.
And that's signed to things like cars or.
Well, it's hard to do a beneficiary on a car.
No, okay.
But it's easy to do a beneficiary on bank accounts. Mm-hmm. All bank accounts can have a payable on death beneficiary on them. Retirement accounts. Broke not and to go to bank. Not if this is how I want money to charity, to my church. I want to give money to my friends. I have a lot of single people who really like to benefit their friends. These are people that have been with them all their lives.
Or their friends' children.
Exactly, their friends' children. Larger with a property for someone that we were transferring from a trust, got the tax assessed value, it was $300,000.
Wow.
And this was country property.
Wow.
Okay? So even all that property we call air property can be valuable. So,
and it might be land.
It was.
Right.
It was total land.
Totally
it had no house on it at all. None. So don't underestimate the value of what you have, and treat it with respect. Treat it as if this is really your legacy. This is your legacy. So put it in order and say, if you raised your grandchildren and you want your grandchildren to inherit from you, equal to your children, then say so. Okay? If you've done more for one child while you were alive than another, you may want to equalize that. And you may want to say, I paid for Jennifer's child to go to college. Or I gave Jennifer I'm just making up a name now, a down payment on her house. So I'm going to make sure that Ronald and Ted have more of my estate than I'm going to give Jennifer, because I've already given Jennifer so much, you see. Mm-hmm. I like to explain it because you don't want bad feelings.
Yes.
All of this is about preserving family.
It's great if you can discuss your decisions in advance.
And I tell people, tell me what you're trying to do so that I can write it in a way that your family will understand. Quite often, one child has more than the others or less than the others. for example, there are children that never left home. There are children who left home and came back. And so you can say, my sons both have homes of their own, but my daughter doesn't have a home. So, or my sister doesn't have a home. So I want my sister to have either my home, or you can have a life estate. Remember last week we talked about life estates. My sister or my brother a life estate. So you make sure they have a place to live for the rest of their life. And then when they die, it goes to whoever you say. It could be their children. It could be the other children that you didn't benefit, you see. But there's so many things that you can do when you have life.
Maybe some people may think that, well, I can't do any of this. It all sounds great, but I don't have any money. Talk to us about how manageable this process is and how we can get it done.
It is important that you go to a lawyer in the place that you live to get this done, because each state is different. Okay, so you want to talk to somebody who knows the law of your particular, let's call it jurisdiction. Okay, and you talk with the lawyer, you find out what they cost, what they charge for these different things. Most lawyers will accept some kind of a payment plan if you're not able to pay all of it at the same time. But it is worth it to get it done, and to get it done right, and to get it done well. And once it's done unless you want to change it, you see. Now, people do things in different ways. I like to make an estate for my clients where I put not only their documents in the book, but I also have them to put statements from each of their bank accounts, so that you know what money they have, where their bank accounts are, their return accounts, their life insurance policies, deeds to their house. Now I make people bring me their deeds, because stuff may not be what you think it is on a deed, okay? Until you look at it. And I don't mean the deed of mortgage, I mean the deed. Because that's the actual deed, that's what's going to control, and that's what's going to govern. And if something needs to be fixed, it's best to get it fixed when the person is alive, and not wait until they die.
Very important.
It really is important.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Attorney Ethel Mitchell is our host and also our guest today. We're talking about wills, trust, estate planning, and probate. Our time is winding down to about 15 minutes or so. And this is Stacy Royster, executive producer. I'm co-hosting with Ethel. I know that there's some other things you want to get to in today's show. So if there are any wrapping comments.
Okay. Yeah, let me say one more thing too. Back to the power of attorney.
Okay.
A lot of people don't realize that when you put somebody else's name on your bank account, their creditors can come and get your money. There are a lot of families, especially older people, who will, for convenience sake, put their son or their daughter on their bank account, so that they can write their checks when they go to the pharmacy or to the grocery store and so on like that. The power of attorney is very effective and helpful in that if you put their name on as power of attorney, they can still do the same thing, but their creditors can't get to your money. Okay? And that's important. And most banks, all banks, have their own power of attorneys. So if you have a relative who is doing your business for you, writing your bills, or who you would depend upon to do that, it is much better for you to take that person to the bank with you, put their name down as a power of attorney for you. That allows them to sign your name and then their name as your power of attorney, execute your checks and so on like that. Still do what they're doing, but you don't have to worry about their tax bill or their creditors coming to get your money. That's an important distinction that people really need to know.
That's very important.
Because they don't know it, and it's critical that a lot of people know that. Okay?
Thank you, Ethel.
That's
that is
really,
so
really
important.
Okay? Now, Stacy mentioned that we want to bring up some new things in this program with the time that we have, although it's still going fast, it seems. But, for example, this week, I want to be able to give you announcements and bring information to people about current things or good news, and I also want to continue educating people about the law. This week, if you listen to the news at all, for the past month actually, we've been celebrating the 50th anniversary of the passage of the Civil Rights Act. This was the act that was signed in 1964 by President Lyndon Johnson. And what I want to do is to read to you the different titles of the act and what it governed. An important fact that I want to stress is that this act was about African Americans' rights. The civil rights movement was primarily to rectify the legacy of slavery and segregation that had occurred for 200 years in this country. Later, this act was used to, and is still being used, and rightfully so, to protect the rights of women, of gays, of other minorities, and so forth. But primarily in 1964, when this act was passed, it was to try to correct the injustices that had been suffered by black people in this country for over 200 years. Because even though slavery supposedly emancipated people, the law did not go along with that emancipation. So in 1964, the Civil Rights Act had several titles. They had 10 titles actually. And I'm just going to read them to you because I think it's important that people know more specifically about the law. Title I barred equal application of voting requirements. As so many people know, historically, black people were prevented from voting by all kinds of ridiculous rules and regulations. Title I of the Civil Rights Act truly stopped that process, or tried to, I should say. That's why it's so important. Anybody that doesn't vote shouldn't complain. Okay? Anybody that doesn't vote, so many people died trying to get that right. It's the only way in a democracy that you have a voice. Mm-hmm. And when I say vote, I mean people need to vote in sheriff's elections,
midterm elections,
not just congressional,
everything,
not just president either. You need to vote in your county,
right? But
you need to vote in all these little bitty elections because that's where the stuff gets done.
In your community,
in your community, and if they know you're going to vote, they're going to pay attention to you. They don't have to like you, and you don't have to like them either. But if you vote, okay, you have a voice, and that's the source of power in this country, okay? And that's what tipped the scale, especially in the South, but also in the North. Respect for people that came when we started to be able to vote. Title II had to do with public accommodations. The Civil Rights Act, Title II, outlawed discrimination in hotels, restaurants, theaters, and all other public accommodations that were in interstate commerce. What does that mean? I'm old enough to remember when you could not go to the bathroom. You could not go to the bathroom when you were driving down the highway. Okay? I was born in Texas and raised in Louisiana. We went back and forth constantly. We knew exactly where you could go to the bathroom.
So you had to time.
Exactly. You had to. And if you had children, that was too bad.
It means we couldn't, at that time, go in theaters.
You couldn't go in theaters. You had to sit upstairs in the theater if you could go at all. Mm-hmm. You couldn't go to hotels. Mm-hmm. How many black people go to Marriott and all this other stuff that we take for granted?
And we don't
Barely 50 years ago, they could keep you out. And this was for black people. There was an experiment I was telling Stacy about where black people from and I say black now, African American, whatever you want to call us, those of us born here, they dressed up people as African diplomats and they went to restaurants up and down the highway in Maryland. Every last one of those restaurants served
as
Africans, but they would not serve them as African Americans. That's what this law was about. And we need to remember that. We need to remember that, and we need to respect that. Title III had to do with desegregation of public facilities. Title IV had to do with desegregation of schools, of education. It wasn't just Brown versus Board of Education. I mean, yes, Thurgood Marshall was amazing. His whole team was amazing. That's a whole history that's worth looking up, and I hope our young people will really look at the history, the actual history of the civil rights movement, okay? But Title IV was the one that desegregated public education as far as the law was concerned. Title V created the Civil Rights Commission. Title VI authorized the federal government to withdraw money from federal money from programs that discriminated. That was a huge lever because a lot of state programs are funded by federal money. And the only way in which black people were able to benefit from that is because of the threat of the federal government taking the money away. Once we were finally able to get in there, it was a threat from this law that the federal government would not fund certain programs. And it still is today. Because a lot of people want to go back in history. So we need to know this stuff.
Right.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Title VII is huge. Part of the Civil Rights Act, Title VII, was the Equal Employment Opportunity section. That said, there shall not be discrimination in any business that had more than 25 people. A lot of people don't realize that. A business had more than 25 people. That's what the law was able to address. You could not discriminate on the basis of race, color, or ethnicity. Title VIII had to do with registration and voting statistics, and it directed the Census Bureau to get information, to collect information about registration and voting by race and by color, because that was really the only way to know what was really happening in various states if you had the actual facts. Okay? Title IX allowed the federal government, the Department of Justice, to intervene in certain cases and to move cases from the states to federal district courts. And in states where state courts were not, shall we say, enforcing the law properly, that allowed the DOJ to come in and move them into a federal district court where they had a better chance of a fair shake at things. Okay? And then Title X created a community relations service that was supposed to help communities in resolving disputes related to discrimination. So that's really what the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was about. If you want to know more about it, if you Google Civil Rights Act of 1964, it comes right up, and you can go to Congressional Quarterly of 1965. It not only tells you about all the various titles, but then it has a long narrative as to the political background of how this came to be. And I think it's important that our people, young and old, know our history. And you can learn it from a lot of different places. It's important, and when we teach it in school, and God knows we need to teach it to everybody, not just black people. White kids need to know this stuff too. Everybody in this country needs to know the real history of the law when it comes to civil rights. And I think that's important.
Ethel, let me ask you this. I know we're coming to a close. With this huge legacy of the Civil Rights Act, are we there yet?
We are a lot more there than we were.
Okay. So
I'll put it like that. Still got a way to go. But a lot of what we have to do now has to do with our own efforts. At least the law isn't barring us from doing things. We can go to school. We can get a good education. Okay? When you were in schools that did not have money, did not have the same resources, you were always behind the eight ball. Now we do have it. We can go to libraries. We can get the information. We can go and make the same kind of money if we're qualified to do so. And so there's no reason why we can't do it ourselves. Okay, it doesn't mean that everything is right. It just means that the law doesn't bar us from being able to do it, and people can't properly bar us from being able to do it. But we've got to still get up and do it. We still got to vote. We still got to, save our own money and be responsible for our own selves. But the law is not keeping us in the status of being sharecroppers as we were before, or being uneducated or minimally or, not educated in the same way. So I know we're a lot closer. I know life is a whole lot better than it used to be.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And we need to celebrate that.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely worth celebrating as we move toward a society of being more equal.
Yes.
More just.
Yes. This has been Attorney Ethel Mitchell
and Stacey Royster.
It's with Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell. If you need any help doing your wills, your trust, your power of attorneys, or help with administering an estate, call me at 202-772-1988. 202-772-1988. Have a good week and join us next week for more Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Lali.
You've been listening to Law Talk with Ethel Mitchell. Be sure to tune in next Saturday at 11:30 a.m. for another informative broadcast. To reach Attorney Mitchell, you may do so by calling 202-772-1988. That's 202-772-1988. Or log on to her website, www.lawtalkwithethelmitchell.com.